Hey everyone, and welcome back. So it's time to look at the top 10 new Nintendo Switch games hitting the eShop for this week. Now I know this video is a couple of days late, and I'm sorry about that. I've been really under the weather. However, this is a week with some really great games coming out, so I wanted to make sure to get this video out there. So hopefully it won't be too late and you'll have a chance to check out some of these games. Just remember, if you are liking the video, hit that like button. So our first game for today is going to be Breakout Beyond, that released on March 25th, and it's going to be selling for $14.99. Now this is the revival of a classic arcade series from Atari, and basically it's Brick Breaker. However, with some modern flair, some very colorful designs, and some new gameplay tricks here and there. Basically, if you're a fan of classic arcade games, I think this one should be definitely a game to target for this week. However, if you're not necessarily a fan of old school arcade games, this one will be a hard sell for you. But let's take a look at the trailer and see what they're offering. By the way, I think Atari's been doing a really good job with reviving a lot of its classic arcade series. They disappeared there for a while, and they've come back pretty strong. So the design is obviously classic Brick Breaker, but with some nice visual modern twists. The sort of lightning or basically trail behind the balls is a nice little touch. We'll see in a few seconds as well, they've added 2-player mode, and that has me super interested, because that might take some of the frustration out, especially if you only need to keep one ball active to stay alive. So there we have it. Honestly, it looks good. However, like I said, it's going to be a game for fans of classic arcade games, or maybe a great way to introduce your kids or someone that's never played classic Brick Breaker to the series. However, I do think it's going to have the same disadvantages as the original game, where sometimes it can get really frustrating if you're basically the victim of a really bad bounce. However, at the same time, the gameplay is super easy to get into and very addictive. I also want to congratulate Atari for going for a pretty budget price point at $14.99. I think it's the right move here to get people into this game. So one that I'm definitely very hyped for this week, a great revival of a classic arcade series. So now let's jump into our next game. Now our next game is actually one of my top games for this week. And it released, it is Gal Guardian's Servants of the Dark. It released on March 26th, and it's basically selling for $24.99. Now, this is the follow-up to the other Gal Guardians game that we got, I think, about a year and a half ago, if I'm not mistaken. It's a 2D action platformer done with a sort of mix of Mega Man meets Castlevania, almost. And it has a really original concept where you can freely switch normally between 2 playable characters, or you can play in co-op with one person controlling each one of the characters. And basically, you don't die unless both characters die. So as long as you keep one alive, you can eventually revive the other character and continue playing. It's a really original concept. The original game, I think, was super underrated. I love the original Gal Guardians, so I'm really excited to see it getting a sequel, and hopefully the sequel will live up to that first game. So let's take a look at the trailer.
Civil War, the Demon Realm. There, the Demon Lord Maxim's castle lies in ruin.
By the way, this is done by the same company that did Gunvolt and all that, so they know their 2D action platforming. And as usual, they're using a very anime, a very anime art style. Same mix of one character that's gonna have like a basically a ranged like gun attack, and the other one is gonna be more melee attacks.
Sworn servant to the Demon Lord Maxim. She
I love that, a
attacks from
shotgun,
distance
man.
with guns filled with demonic energy and uses sub-weapons
Oh.
up close. Masha, younger maid sister, friend to demon and monster alike. Her whip and dash can cover close and medium ranges, while her sub-weapons help with exploration.
Oh, so interesting.
Collect items, craft weapons, and enhance them as you restore your lord to power. Search across the realm for the lost souls of vassals and rebuild Maxim's castle.
So there seems to be more of a Metroidvania style to this one, because the original had more of a straightforward style to it. This one seems to be done more in a Metroidvania style.
Survivors after the Lord's vassals were slaughtered. And the Demon Lord Maxim, clinging to life in a shell of his former self.
So they did keep the co-op mode where you can play with each character at the same time. Pretty nice. That's going to be really interesting if it is like a Metroidvania style.
Castle conquering action resurrected. Gal Guardians, servants of the dark.
That's a really interesting direction to bring the game in, going for that Metroidvania style. I think it can work for this game, but the gameplay looks at the heart the same as the first game, where it's really a swap between the two characters, figuring out which character is better for which scenario, and then basically using that to your advantage. So I love this series. I can't wait to try this one out. It is one of the front runners also for the game for Friday. However, I don't want to lock anything in yet. We'll see what game we're playing on Friday when we actually get to Friday. So now let's take a look at our next game. Now, our next game, I'm going to, this list is called the top 10 games. This is a game that it's more of I have to highlight it because it's one of those classic series that I grew up with that now they're trying to bring back in gaming form. However, I'm going to say I'm not particularly a fan of the way they're bringing this game back. So our next game is Care Bears Unlock the Magic. That's coming out on March 27th. So it should be out by the time the video is live. And it's selling for $29.99. Now, this is actually a sort of accumulation of mini games. It almost looks like they're trying to do a slightly Mario Party style of gameplay, but using Care Bears. However, I've got to say the gameplay doesn't look super impressive in my opinion. I still wanted to highlight the game because most likely it's going to catch a lot of people's eyes, especially if you grew up in like the 80s and 90s where Care Bears was actually a thing on TV. I think they made a comeback at one point, but they weren't as big as they were back then. So let's take a look at the trailer nonetheless. However, I'm not necessarily recommending picking up this game, especially that at $29.99. It feels like a much too high of a price point for what we're getting here. But I still wanted to highlight it because probably some people were going to have questions about it. So let's take a look at the trailer. So see, like there seems to be like a game board. Travel over 200 levels. So we have Brick Breaker, but obviously much simpler than the game we saw previously.
Care Bears, unlock the magic.
So that is pretty much it. Now, honestly, yeah, I can't recommend the game. The gameplay doesn't necessarily look very good. Like I said, I'm more highlighting it because the property is so well known, and it's more to say maybe take a look at this game deeper if you were going to pick it up, because I think that even if you're picking up for kids, there's probably way better options out there. But ultimately, Care Bears Unlock the Magic, out on March 27th, $29.99. It feels overpriced for the gameplay that we saw by a lot. So let's move on to the next one. We're not going to spend too much time here on this one. Now, the next one has me extremely intrigued for this week, and it's called GladMort. Okay, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I that's the only way I can see of saying it. It's also brought to us by Pixel Heart, which is a company that makes some of my most beloved games on the Switch, like Tanuki Justice. And it has an awesome, very Sega Genesis style to it. Now, this game is also coming out on March 27th, and it's going to be selling for $14.99. So once again, a pretty decent budget price point. And it has a ghouls and ghosts vibe to it. Like you'll see from the gameplay seems to play out a very much like ghouls and ghosts. And I love that style of gameplay. I love that challenging platforming, and it looks like that's what it's going to be trying to deliver. So let's take a look at the trailer. Another front runner for my stream on Friday. Let's take a look at what it's offering. The pixel art looks absolutely beautiful too, but a very Sega Genesis style to it, you'll see. I guess you can already see the ghouls and ghosts influence here. Losing the armor, being naked. So there we have it, GladMort. So I do want to warn, I think you're going to have to expect a very challenging game here. But if you're a fan of that style of gameplay, I can't see how you're not loving this trailer and really excited to try out the game. Once again, I'm really glad to see that they're also putting the game at $14.99 because hey, I think it's a very aggressive price point where a lot of people are going to take the chance to dive in and maybe find out that the game could possibly be a great game. Now, I can't say for sure because I haven't played it yet, but definitely one of the front runners once again for my stream on Friday. Now, let's jump to our next game for this week. Now, our next game is going to be a Bubble Ghost remake, which is releasing also on March 27th. You'll see the 27th is a big date for this week. This one will be selling for $19.99. Now, Bubble Ghost Remake is an interesting game because I actually already played the demo on stream. So you can check that out on the channel. I did try the demo. It's a game that I think they've really done a beautiful job of remaking the original game. I'm just going to be totally honest with you, and I said it when I played the demo. I just don't think the gameplay is for me. It's a puzzle platformer, I'll call it, because it really is puzzle type gameplay, but where you basically have to blow a bubble and go through different sequences. So basically different mazes by basically adjusting and blowing a bubble as a ghost. It's a gameplay that seems very interesting, very inventive, but it just doesn't hit with me personally. But nonetheless, I do think a lot of people were waiting for this remake if you were a fan of the original Bubble Ghost. And I do think for the right player, this is going to be a great pickup for this week. And I do love the art style. And the good news is there's a free demo on the eShop, so you can try it out for yourself. Now let's take a look at the trailer.
Heinrich, I hope this letter finds you well. It's been so long since we last saw each other. I hope you return soon to me.
So basically you have to blow the bubble through the maze, but you have to never have it touch like a wall or anything. The boss fight was actually pretty interesting. Because yes, they do manage to integrate boss fights into it. So obviously there's a huge graphical change from the original, and I like the art style. And there we have it, Bubble Ghost Remake. Like I said, I definitely recommend you try out the trailer. The trailer will either convince you that you're going to love the gameplay, or it's going to tell you whether you can get it's basically not for you, like it was for me. But I do think nonetheless it's a high quality game that's been remade in a beautiful fashion. And I've got to say the demo is pretty generous. You do quite a few levels and even the first boss in it. So definitely try it out before picking up the game. Once again, $19.99 for the quality of gameplay they put in here is actually pretty decent once again. I've got to say, a lot of the games are really, really aggressively priced for this week, something that I really appreciate seeing. Okay, so that was Bubble Ghost Remake. Let's jump into our next one. Now, our next one is going to be Distant Bloom. Now, this game is also releasing on March 27th, and it is basically a management sim game. However, a management sim game done as an adventure game as well. It seems like some really, really original gameplay. I really also like the visual presentation here. I'm just wondering how all of this is really going to come together and if it's going to be cohesive. Now, this one's going to be selling for $19.99. Let's take a look at the trailer and it'll maybe help you wrap your head around the gameplay a little bit. Like, I'm really wondering how this gameplay is going to come together. Because they talk about discovery, they talk about management. It's really hard to wrap my head around exactly how all of this is going to come together. The way I can imagine it is it seems like you come to an area, you have a grid, you have to hit certain objectives, which will allow you sort of to progress further within the game. But definitely one that is, I think, has tons of potential for this week, but definitely one that I'm going to have to try to really make a decisive opinion on, because the gameplay could be, like, all this could come together in a great fashion, or it could also, unfortunately, miss the mark. But definitely a game that I wanted to highlight for this week, because I think it has a very, very interesting style behind it. Okay, next, we come to Cookie Cutter. Now, I've said it a lot this week, but this is another top game for me for this week. A Metroidvania yet again, however, with an absolutely insane art style. Like, this art style is absolutely gorgeous. However, it's also very gory at the same time. This game has actually been on my radar for quite a while, so I'm glad to see it finally releasing, and it is March 27th as well for $19.99. So let's take a look at the trailer and see what this game has to offer. Like I said, the art style is gorgeous. The boss designs look absolutely insane.
Hey, the mysterious pink-haired warrior.
Hey there, pretty mama. We desire to leave this place.
Fully voiced dialogue is pretty impressive for a game that's selling for $19.99. So there we have it, Cookie Cutter, the Overkill edition, finally hitting the Nintendo Switch. Look, I'm convinced the game looks great. Is it going to play great? I'm worried a bit about the performance on the Switch, but we'll get to figure it out once we get to try the game. Once again, I've said it, a front runner for my stream on Friday, which is why I don't want to make a decision yet, because there's actually so many good looking games for this week. There's even one last game that is in contention, not this one, but the next. But first, I do want to look at Kemono Heroes. Now, Kemono Heroes, I can tell you guys, I've already played this game. Why? Because this is actually a re-release on the Switch. This game was delisted, the rights were bought back by another publisher, and now they are relisting the game. And I got a review copy for this one. I am in love with this game. It is super fun. It is an arcade-style action platformer, and although the gameplay is very different from Ghouls and Ghosts or Ghosts and Goblins, it does have the same premise where you actually have to do 2 runs through the game to get the real final ending of the game. The good news is it takes about, I would say, if you're pretty decent at the game, I would say about an hour and a half to 2 hours to do both runs through. And each character really has a different play style. So there's a ton of replayability, because playing the game as each one of the 4 different characters is actually a really different experience. So if you're a fan of like simple to play and pick up arcade action games, this is a definite great game for this week. By the way, it'll be selling for $14.95. And when I normally say I can't talk about the game, we're lucky, because since the video is coming out late, it'll be after embargo. So I can tell you guys, love the game. There will be a separate video on it coming to the channel. So let's take a look at the trailer. It's also a game which is awesome because you can play it up to 4 players at once. I played it in solo. Was still very much fun. However, I can see that it's probably going to be a game that it'll be crazy to play with a bunch of friends. It'll probably be even a ton better. And there's some really fun abilities that each one of the different characters has. So there's really basically a real fun to do different team ups as well, especially if you're playing with 1 or 2 buddies and you have to choose. But overall, love the pixel art. Gameplay is fun, easy to get into. But at the same time, there's some elements that do get challenging eventually in the gameplay. Kemono Heroes, I don't know how I missed this game the first time it hit the Switch, but I'm really glad that I didn't miss its relaunch. And I'm glad that this game was relisted, because I think that anyone who hasn't played it yet is missing out if you're a fan of arcade-style gameplay. Great game overall. Okay, let's take a look now at we have 2 games left for this week. Our before last game is my last top game for this week, because like I said, normally I have only 1 or 2 top games. This week I have 4, because there are 4 games that are looking absolutely amazing. This is the last one, Twilight Monk, that is releasing also on March 27th, and it'll be selling for $19.99. Now, I actually featured this game on the show, I would say 2 to 3 weeks ago, because it was published with a mistaken release date on the Nintendo Switch eShop. It was supposed to come out, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of February. Finally, it's coming out now at the end of March. It's a Metroidvania, once again, with an absolutely beautiful art style. And I've got to say, this was going to be the game I was going to play the week it was coming out. So that is why it's once again a front runner to be on stream on Friday. Let's take a look at the trailer, and I think you'll be convinced as well. So it's an RPG Metroidvania. I don't think you need to say the RPG style, because a lot of Metroidvanias have RPG elements to it, but maybe this one will have more RPG heavy elements to it. I also love this play of like side-scrolling levels, but a top-down map after that. So I guess that's maybe why they're trying to sell the RPG factor, because it seems like you hit enemies and then you have encounters and stuff like that. The gameplay is looking like really fun as well. Twilight Monk. Sorry if I was quiet in that one. I was appreciating the beauty behind the artwork. Honestly, a game that I'm really hoping is going to turn out to be good because it really has a ton going for it. Beautiful art style, really interesting style of gameplay with the switch between the top down for the maps and the cities, and then the side scrolling for what would be like maybe dungeons or levels. And I think this blend of Metroidvania could be a really interesting one going forward, because a lot of Metroidvanias now are sort of all getting caught into the same bucket. This one, I'm really happy that it's trying to do something different. And once again, $19.99, if this turns out to be a good game with the quality of artwork in this game, I think once again they're going for a very aggressive price for this week. Now we have one final game to take a look at, which is Shadow of the Orient. Now, once again, it's an action platformer. Now, this one I've also played a little bit of, because I did get a review code for it. However, I didn't have time to play a ton of it. I played about an hour to an hour and a half. It has some really interesting elements to it. However, there are still some definite questions that I need to answer about the platforming, because the platforming could be a little glitchy or iffy at times, but I do want to see if it's reserved to only one or two small elements, or overall how the gameplay is going to shape up. But I do love the concept here. It's a 2D action platformer based on martial arts combat. And I love the concept of the gameplay. It's the execution that I still have a few questions to answer. But I still wanted to highlight the game for this week because it has a really budget price point, this one, of $9.99, and will also be launching on March 27th. So let's take a look at the game, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I love the concept of the different weapons and all that, because that is a ton of fun in the game. So there we have it. Now, look, the trailer looks awesome. The gameplay, there's a ton that this game has going for it. The combat, I would say, is really good. It's fun. You can see combos are a big part of it. There's a nice flow to it. It's the platforming so far that has been slightly inconsistent. And my major problems with the game, or like basically so far, has been the inconsistent platforming, where I do want to answer the questions. Is it a question that I just need to get used to the platforming, or is it really the game that has maybe some responsiveness issues on the Switch? But I'll get back to you on this one. I still wanted to highlight the game because it looks great. It has a ton going for it. Maybe it's also something that just needed a day one patch. I'll be checking to see if one has come out. But Shadow of the Orient for $9.99 nonetheless is a definite game that I wanted to highlight for this week. So there we have it. Those are the top 10 Nintendo Switch games for this week. Let me know in the comments down below which are your favorite. Which one would you like to see me play on Friday on the stream? Also, if you think I missed any games coming out that came out this week that should have been on the list, let me know in the comments down below. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. And as usual, I'll see you in my next video.